right, Tom, go ahead.
Thanks, Brad. I'll have you
pick up a couple sheets as we go, if you don't mind. So the regulation reads that in order to be legal, actually, would you grab that middle one to start, please?
You don't want the biggest one?
No, that one's not quite there yet. If the regulation reads that in order to be legal, one of the ram's horns must travel through 360 degrees of the circle. And when you bring that ram into Fish and Game, there are 3 ways that we'll assess that. The first one is called the perfect circle test. And the idea is that you line the tip of the horn up with the base, and if that makes a perfect circle, that ram is legal. And the best way I can describe that is to show you a sub-legal ram and a legal ram at the same time. So Brad will hold the legal sheet. And by the way, these are all for you guys to come up and look at, handle, assess curl, assess age. I'll stick around afterwards and we can look at these individually and I'll answer questions as late as you guys want to stay, get your hands on some of these rams. If you put the tip next, you line the tip up with the base from the side like you might be in the field, you notice that the ram I'm holding kind of makes an oval shape. The horns on this ram make an oval shape. And on that legal sheet that Brad's got, that makes a perfect circle. The second way that we'll assess legal is called the stick test. And that's simply where you take a ruler and you draw an imaginary line from the base of 2 horns. And if one of those horns crosses above that line, that sheep is legal. This guy's a great teaching tool because his left horn is legal by the stick, but his right horn falls shy by just a fuzz. And again, you guys can come up and handle these animals and take a look and see what you got. Then the final way that we will assess a ram, sometimes you get a ram that drops really low and spins around. It's real tight curl, and the tip will never reach the base as viewed from the side. But that way is called the base compared to the tip test. And I like this guy to teach it because what you're looking at is the direction of growth on this horn. And the short way to think about it is the tip growing in the same direction or past, is the tip growing in the same direction that the base was when it left the head? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. There are 2 other ways. A sheep can have both horns broken or be legal by being 8 years old. I strongly recommend that nobody try to age legal, try to make a ram legal by way of age through a spotting scope. There are a few people who can do it. I'm not one of them. I handle close to 200 animals a year in the Anchorage office as we seal them. And I would really, really prefer that nobody here has to talk to the troopers after talking to me with the sub-legal sheet. We can talk about aging a little bit. And again, I would like to have you guys practice on some of these animals, but in order to define an age ring or an annulus, that ring will show a direction change. If you look on okay, let me back up and talk about some biology. So every year in the fall, food becomes scarce, the rams go into rut and quit eating. That means the horns quit growing. The horns won't generally start growing again until May, when green up hits, the snow melts off, and they're feeding on some fresh vegetation. So when the horns quit growing, they lay down a ring. And it looks like kind of a dark line across the horn. The best way to look at that, you can look at it through from the side here, and you'll see both a line that persists all the way around the horn, and you'll see a little bit of a direction change. You'll see actually a little angle on the inside of that horn as from the back here. So come on up and touch those, take a look at them. But in order for it to be a true annulus, sometimes sheep get injured, they get hurt, horns grow funny. Things in nature aren't always a perfect progression. In order for it to be a true annulus, you need to see it all the way around the horn. You need to see that direction change. Again, best not to try to make the sheep legal through your spotting scope.
You talked about that double groomer. How much that's
in order for a sheep to be legal by being both horns broken, this guy here is an interesting example because he's a 7-year-old and he has one horn broken. His right horn is broken here, but his left is not. A few years ago, the Board of Game clarified this regulation, and in order for a sheep to be legal, both horns have to be broken, and that means that both lamb tips have to be missing. So when a lamb is born in May, those horns start growing almost immediately. And if you come up and look at these animals, you'll see in a lot of cases a little bitty ridge right here between an inch and 3 or 4 inches in from the end of the horn. And that's the horn that's grown that first year of life, that first summer. So that kind of pops out May 25th, 26th, those horns start growing. And by January, food has gotten scarce, and that little ram's got somewhere between a half an inch and 3 or 4 inches of horn. And that's your lamb tip. So we count that. Of course, that horn won't start growing again until his first birthday in May. We count that as what marks his first year. And then, so in order for him to be legal by age or by broken, that entire lamb tip on both horns has to be missing. That's, again, it's going to be a little bit tricky to look at that through a spotting scope. But my recommendation would be you make real sure and look for something that's broken off about like as thick as your wrist before you shoot one on both horns broken. Matt had a really, we're talking about making sheep legal in the field. Matt had a really good comment, and I'll let him share. I won't take credit for it.
Tom, do you want to talk about this book? Because this has all the methods in there, right?
Yeah.
And then I'll close and turn it over to you, Matt. So this is a booklet on identifying legal Dall sheep. We've got 100 copies here tonight. You guys can each take one home and review it. If you have any questions, come on by the Anchorage office on Raspberry. We'll be happy to go over it with you and look at these animals again. And like I said, I'll stick around afterwards. This runs through what I've just told you, actually some real good pictures, and then there's a bit of a quiz at the end of the book you can kind of give yourself a self-test on. So that I'll sit down and shut up and turn it over to Matt.
Yeah, we were just talking before this all started. We have a 2-second rule. We look at it, it's not legal in 2 seconds, we walk away. The more you look at it, the longer it gets. And you start making it legal, and then the problems start, and you gotta go sit down with him and fill out a bunch of paperwork. I've not had to do that, but I've heard people doing it, so just kind of something I practice with my buddies.
For all you aspiring sheep hunters, though, I do want to encourage you, like, it's a big deal. Like, this is your mark as a character of a sheep hunter, is determining whether that ram is legal before you shoot and being 100% sure when you do shoot. That's so important to us with Proving Trail Adventures, is teaching people how to judge legal rams and encouraging all of you that it can absolutely be done in the field. Your eye is really good at picking out perfect circles. Your eye is really good at picking out those angles, whether the tips of the horns are curling back to the same angle as the base of the horns. It's totally doable. I know it's scary when you're going out on your first sheep hunt. I can look back on my first sheep hunt, and the ram was flat out legal, no problem. Shot him, and I was scared to death walking up to that thing. Just in my mind praying, oh God, let him be legal. I don't want to get in trouble. You know, and he's a curl and a quarter. It's like, what am I worried about? But everybody's been there on their first sheep hunt. And we've all seen sublegal rams, and that's the character of a sheep hunter. You walk away from them, and if you look at it, like you said, you're going to know right away whether it is or isn't. And when you do find a full curl, it's plain obvious, and you're going to know for sure.
I'm not sure if it's fucking obvious to me. I'm always nervous when I see him, even after I pull the trigger.
We talk about his body size, so that's something. An old mature ram, you don't have to look at the horns to know if he's a really nice one. The big ones will have, the bellies will be sagging down, their hips will be in. I'm talking a 10 to 12-year-old ram. That's what I look for when I'm doing a cursory, and when it's kind of a fishing game too. You look for that. They move slower. If they're a group of rams 7, 8, he's going to be towards the back if they're moving, because they're not moving as fast, and you'll have dark mass. So this is something that you can, when you're looking through the scope, you can do that. But if you're just looking quick and you see that big belly, hips sunken in, body size bigger than anything else around, you know you've got a really nice ram. And that's what I go by. Not necessarily look at the horns. I want to get an old ram. It doesn't have to be, curly and quarter. I got plenty of those, but getting a nice one that's just old and mature is part of the judging of it too. So.
And Matt, you're talking about looking up or down or around.
I think going down and turning an arm is well worth it. My first sheep hunt, I got my butt kicked. I was, looking at all these pictures online and like get that perfect angle online, but when you're out there and you're getting this, and it's like, I can't make sense of this. I started going on a tournament and just backpacking, after work, and there's plenty of sheep down there where you can sit there and look at it and kind of build some confidence, but, that ram right there was hanging out not that long ago, and that one will mess you up because it's huge, but, I like seeing all different angles, but that one straight on where you can see it break that plane is my telltale.
It's definitely harder telling a ram from above. It's the best place you can be to stalk a ram, but it's also the hardest to judge whether that ram's legal. So just keep that in mind.
Anyway, we have our gear, we're on our sheep hunts, we've landed in an airplane or we've hiked in from the road. So how do you approach sheep? Or do you guys stay down low and hike the valleys and glass up, or do you like going up high? And if there's a ridge line, hiking the ridge line, what's your approach to find sheep?
Go ahead.
Everybody look at me. You guys heard the story of the old bull versus the young bull? Don't need to go into detail with that, but slow and methodical. I find that if I'm just walking the valley floor, I'm not thumbing through and seeing what I need to see. Tom, I think you mentioned during sheep season they're less prone to movement.
They seem. Yeah, some of our radio collar data out of 3 different mountain ranges seems to indicate when they get pressured, they tend to hunker down a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I think I was trying to be a track star when I first started all this, and how much ground country could I cover? And, I ran, 14, 15 miles in a day. Like, you just miss so much. Going up high and letting things develop and digging out every corner of that mountain. There's so much value to that. So I like to see it all. So combination. I don't like the skyline myself, but to see as much as possible. You'd be surprised how much you miss once you really slow down and start going up high and looking at the back of these moraines and seeing what happens throughout the course of the day.
You absolutely can't see it all from below. If you got to get somewhere, being down in the drainage is the best way to go. But if you're looking for sheep, they know the areas that can't be seen from below, and that's where those rams are going to hang out. So if you can get up high, you'll see those little shelves. You'll see those high hidden bowls that they're tucked back in. And then just some of the crags way up on top. I mean, they're hanging out on the peaks.
Yeah. So I have an advantage. I usually know where the sheep are from preseason scouting.
It should be on.
Okay. So I had the advantage of preseason scouting. I usually know where they're going to be at. So I will go into that area and then wait for the right opportunity. And I will hunt a ram 2, 3, 4 times a season, sometimes 2 years, sometimes 3 years, a particular ram. I don't always get them, but I have one in mind and so I patterned them. Some years ago, I would even know what winter range they were on and sometimes what ewes and lambs they were with. So I very much, preseason scouting would tell me where they're at. So that means I'm coming in from below and I'm waiting. I'll sit on a glacier, 2 miles, 3 miles, sometimes a day from my airplane, watching a particular ram. If it doesn't get in a place where I can get them, I'm back out. The reason they're in that place is that I'm hunting is he's an old ram. Nobody else has got him, and I'll be very patient. This last ram I got was 35 miles in 4 days, and about 8 miles from my cub. So I did a plane twice until I finally turned them up. So I'm very patient, but I've done a lot of preseason scouting to find those sheep I'm finding.
One thing I'll add is that I spend a lot of time during the course of the year looking at sheep out of an airplane. And one of the things that I've noticed is that as you circle a group of sheep from a cub, they will appear and disappear depending on what kind of angle you've got relative to the sun, what the background looks like. So what you take that a step further for those of us that don't have airplanes and hunt from the ground and are limited to a smaller area is be patient and wait until you get a little bit of different sun angle on the ground, on the glacier, on the moraine, because with a particular light condition, they'll absolutely pop. And with the opposite light condition, they'll just disappear. I don't even want to think about how many rams I've walked by just by moving too far and too fast and looking at something, oh, in the early morning light, nope, nothing here, let's go on to the next. And I don't want to think about it. I don't want that answer.
Please,
That's
yeah.
what we're gonna talk about. They have early morning and late evenings are more active. I have found the light angle is low, so you don't have that harsh light angle, and you can see them better, and they'll be up and feeding. So that feeding time makes them a little bit easier to find, because they'll come out of where they've been bedding. And that's part of my sitting there. I've sat there on the glacier and ice, know where they're at, hours and hours, and then just before dark, or they'll pop out, and there they are, and you knew they were there, you just couldn't find them. So that early morning and late evening is the best time I have found to find them.
Any other questions? Go ahead. Scott, Tom?
Go ahead, Tom.
I would say that each mountain range offers something a little bit different. The Chugach is some of the hardest country I've ever hunted and or worked. I've spent a lot of time in the Brooks. A couple of my personal hunts have gone in the Brooks, and I like that because I like to walk. The way I describe that is that in the Brooks you have to kind of look for something to fall off of. In the Chugach you have to look for stuff not to fall off of. But every mountain range offers something a little different. In general, you have good ram numbers, but smaller sheep in the Wrangles, North Wrangles, a little bit lower densities and some bigger sheep in the South Wrangles and Chugach. A lot of it for me is just access. Do I want to pay for a fly-in hunt, or is this a year I just try to hike my legs off? So every range offers something different. It's a different character, different hunt, different type of ram, different habitat. And I like the challenge of learning new country and kind of going in and just figuring it out.
I can attest that you can hunt every mountain range from the road. It's doable. Man, the Kenai Mountains was the worst. So throw that to the side for later in your career, unless you know something. They're all great. They're all special places. The Chugach was definitely the roughest mountains. That's really gonna turn you into a sheep hunter, or you're never going again.
One more, Brian, go ahead.
Is there an update on MOV if that has any side effects?
Yeah, MOVs, it's a thing. We have isolated it. I have personally isolated one of my study populations. I am not at this point concerned about it. The take-home message, I think, is that there are hundreds of strains of Mycoplasma ovipogonia, and some of those are very, very bad. But we aren't seeing those really bad strains here in Alaska yet. That said, I think we still need to be very cautious about contact with domestic stock, and work as hard as we can to keep pack goats and domestics from having contact with wild sheep. There's a number of ways to do that. The short answer is yeah, it's here in limited amounts. We've picked it up. My work has picked it up in the Talpitas. I have not picked it up in the Wrangell and the Chugach. And unfortunately, some of the best research out of the lower 48 shows that if you have one strain of MOV, that does not give those animals immunity to other strains. So while there are, hundreds and hundreds of strains and only a small handful of really deadly strains, we don't get any benefit by having one strain and a little bit of immunity to it.
Okay, so next question is, we've decided to go sheep hunting, we've gone to range, we've landed on the ground, we spotted a sheep through our spotting scope or binos. How do we approach the sheep? What do you pay attention to? Stay out of sight, thermals, wind. What's your approach once you find a ram?
Start again?
Go for it, Bob.
I think Matt is all hard questions.
So I have a dog with me, so I'm very careful with how I come at it. I usually like to come from low and stay out of sight as much as I can. I'm oftentimes hunting sheep that haven't been hunted before, so whites work really good. In fact, I have to be careful. I look like a ram. I have horns, I have a tail, I have hooves, and I'm down on the ground. And the dog, at that point, if I'm that close to the ram, and they will let me approach to 500 yards like that. And with the equipment we have, it's over at that point. So if I do it from low, and if I like to keep the dog out of sight because that can alert them a lot. I'm doing it from low, and I actually use whites. If the sheep is seeing whites a lot, that's not going to work. They're going to blow out.
So Bob, if you're hunting from below, have you ever had any problems with thermals and scents and custom rims?
Once, but I got too close. So what happened was I was on a glacier. There was a really nice ram that I was after. I had a smaller one with him. Well, the little guy came out to me. He came out 25 yards away, and we're cat and mouse in the rain. And so I'm trying to get it between him and the ram, and then finally I cut in closer, and he smelled me, and I could tell because all the bugs came to me, and I got them the next weekend.
Yes.
I like to come from above if possible. I mean, it buys you time and gives you some room for air in there. I've killed a couple from below, but above is, if at all possible, I do my best to get above. That's just personal preference, but sometimes that doesn't happen, so that's where the shooting piece comes in to give you a little bit more opportunity if you do get to a situation where there's a little bit of distance.
So the main thing is you're staying outside, you're wearing whites, you don't wear whites above those. You pay any attention to the scents and thermals?
Yeah, I mean, I'm constantly checking the wind. I've got a little indicator in my bino harness, and I'm hitting that thing every few minutes and paying attention to it. Yeah, I mean, you gotta have that in your favor for sure.
Anyone here hunting with the bow this year? We got a few people. I talked to Frank Noska earlier today, who couldn't be here, but asked him to give us some tidbits of information of archery hunting for sheep. He says number one is patience. He wears whites, and he says sometimes he'll be 200 to 300 yards from rams for 2 to 3 days, just waiting for the perfect opportunity. He says wind is not a huge factor for him, and he says he likes to come over a ridge and shoot down at a ram. But I think hunting archery, finding a ram, be extremely patient, wait for the perfect opportunity to make your stop. That was the advice from Frank Dawson. The next question is, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made sheep hunting? It's a lot easier to learn from other people's mistakes. Last year, Scott and I went on a sheep hunt, and I was the hunter and shooter. And I can tell you, I was on the side of the mountain. The mountain was like this, and I had a tripod, and I dropped my pack 300 or 400 yards back. Mistake number one: never ever drop your pack, or if you do drop it, really think twice about it. Every time I drop my pack, it's always a mistake. I always need something in it. Always need it for rest from my gun. But I was on the right side of a mountain, and I got a bipod on my gun, and it was a 500-yard shot. And the gun was canted, and there's 6 inches of snow, and there was no way with just my bipod that I could level the gun. And if your gun is canted 1 degree at 1,000 yards, you're shooting 5 inches to the right if your gun's canted to the right. Well, when your gun's canted 15 or 20 degrees, it makes a huge difference. And so it was a 2-week hunt. This was day 11. This was our first opportunity, and I shot and missed a ram. So I tell that so you guys can learn from my mistake, especially if you're shooting any long distance at all. Don't shoot your pack. Try everything you can to make sure your gun is level. Go to the range, and like Matt said, you can shoot at a bench all day long at 1,000 yards, but shooting in conditions on the side of a mountain is way different than shooting at a range. And I never thought I would miss 500 yards, but I did last year, and it was a painful lesson.
So biggest mistake I made was I'm with my dog, and so I'm very careful where I leave him when I'm going to do the final stalk. I was on a Western Last Range, really nice ram. It was my third year on him. He ended up being 44. It's a dandy. I got maybe 500 yards away, and he was potential of seeing me and my dog. So I tied him to my pack, and then getting 150 yards from that ram when I shot him. That was a mistake time to the pack. Because the pack came to me all across that time, stuff spread all over, 400 yards of crap across the mountain. So, biggest mistake I made, time and pack.
I think my biggest mistake has been coming out too early, getting letting my mind defeat me. And I have to play some games with myself to stay psyched after 4 or 5 or 6 days. But, you know, there's been a lot of opportunities that have showed up at day 8, day 9, day 10.
So on our sheep hunts, we typically get one crack at legal rams. And the worst mistake I made was day 9. We weren't patient, and we finally found this ram. It was a ridiculous hunt, and we just pushed it. We weren't patient, and we ended up blowing that ram out. And that was absolutely like the lowest point of my sheep hunting career. This epic hunt, this endurance trip we'd been on. We finally find this ram, and we didn't stick to what we preach. You know, be patient and let things unfold. Let the stalk, let the situation like create itself. And we just pushed it too hard. Day 9 blew that ram out. So that was my biggest mistake, not being patient.
Hey Scott, can you talk in more detail about that? How do you know when to stop and when to go?
Whoa.
Like, you got busted because the ram saw you?
Yes. I'm not a long range shooter, so we were 460 yards from this ram. And, you know, I figured, okay, if he'll come 80 yards closer, you know, we'll take it. And we had this little spot set out. He's kind of moving that direction. And if he gets there, you know, I can make that shot, no problem. And I don't know. We just let our minds tell us that we quit thinking. You know, he'd been working to the west all day, and for some reason we decided he's all of a sudden moving back the other direction. So we tried to get in closer, and next thing we know, he's standing on that ledge where if we'd have waited, we'd have had the shot on him. And now we're under 100 yards and he's gone. So how do you determine when to move in and when to be patient? I mean, err on the side of patience, but at the same time, if especially if you're rifle hunting, I mean, Frank would probably say you can't push anything with the bow, but for rifle hunting, you've got a pretty good buffer depending on what your shooting ability is, and depending on what your time frame of the hunt is. You know, if it's the last day, I mean, yeah, you got to make something happen. But otherwise, if it's day 6, if it's day 8, and you got another day or two, wait and see what happens tomorrow. You know, if it's getting late in the day. A lot of it comes from experience. Yeah, just putting time in and out there.
Too much food. You know, you start talking 2 pounds of food, you know, 10 to 14 days. It's a ton of weight, it's a ton of bulk, and I think everybody's like, oh, what if I starve? And, you know, 5 years ago, I took 2.2 pounds a day, and I just overloaded myself, and it was the point of diminishing returns. And that's one piece that I'm very conscious of, is how much I take. And then the second is just slow down. The ram I killed last year, he was above me for 2 days. I didn't see him until I got to 3,000 feet. So I normally would walk by him, but just slow down and dig in, and go on top and come back and get every in we can.
So Matt, now you take how much food?
1 pound, 1.2 a day works for me. That might not work for you, but that's what works for my body. And you know, I try to keep it under 11 pounds for 10 days.
I'll speak to that first. So years ago, I wouldn't hunt the first 20 days of the season. I want the experience of being out by myself, and I have a dog, and my part of the hunt is just to be by myself and undisturbed rams. Around September 1st, that's when moose hunting starts. A lot of that effort is done. The first week of the season, 50% of the effort is. So I hunt that now because of the airplane rule. And it's because I'm pre-season scouted. I don't want to have any potential somebody saying that I'm using an airplane. I don't. So I go opening day, but I know it'll ram dog now. But I would prefer to hunt later. After the weather event, it happens the end of August, early September. I call it the Indian summer. We got some snow, pushes the big ones out of the country. That was my favorite time to hunt. and I wouldn't seek anybody out in the field then. Now I'm on opening day, but I got the ram done last year. I was at Everett. I hunted 3 times. It took me that long, and I ended up shooting the wrong ram. I didn't know there's another nice one in the area, so I'm hunting the same one for the 3rd year now. And he's out there again. Our RHAK's got him, and I want to go on.
I like the opener. I think I would go nuts sitting in my house if I knew sheep season was over and I wasn't out there. Well, I'd probably get kicked out too, so I gotta be out there. But I'd like to hunt all every single day if I could. So the opener is the answer.
As we've done our research and find out which areas, some areas are notorious for lots of pressure early season. You kind of juggle that with what's the sheep population. And if, whether you've done some scouting and there's only a couple legal rams, might be a good idea to be in there before opening day and post it up on them. But I think the stats show that half the rams are getting killed a year. Half the legal rams are getting killed. So there's plenty rams left over for the late season hunters who essentially have the mountains to themselves.
Right, so I just want to thank Resident Hunters of Alaska, and so Brian is back here, if you guys want to join or buy a raffle ticket, and also Alaska Bow Hunter Association, Tim Thomas, Tim, raise your hand. So that's Tim, and then Gary Colbath is here too. Okay, he stepped out, but if you guys have any questions about Alaska Bow Hunter Association, Marlon DeBette's in the back, he's the former president of that. It's a great local organization, they're doing some great work, they're helping to buy and replace targets at Kincaid Park. They're doing some projects out in the valley as well, nothing out there, so. And after we conclude here, you guys feel free to come up and talk to any other panel. And Scott Liber's released some of his DVDs, and you guys can talk to them as well. But let's just give a big round of applause to our awesome panel.